Turning to Mr. Genuis, you have the floor for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Chair. I want to ask specifically about Liberal Minister of Procurement, Jean-Yves Duclos. We've just heard some questions about the role of the minister. We're supposed to have a system of ministerial accountability, but you've just said that the minister effectively has no role in actual procurement. Given that his title is Minister of Procurement, I'm just trying to understand, what does Jean-Yves Duclos do all day as Minister of Procurement?
Thank you very much for the question. Just to clarify, I was speaking about active procurement where there's open bids.
Okay, so when it comes to ArriveCan, you have the decision made, you have the ensuing problems and scandals, the policies related to it. Your department advised CBSA that there are problems here. Are we to believe that all throughout this process, not just while the bid is actually open, but all throughout this process, there is no role for the minister or the minister's office?
Thank you very much for the question. I think it might be helpful just to give a little bit of a historical context. So
it has to be very brief because I have 5 minutes.
I'll be very brief. I'm very respectful in the sense that I try to answer the questions very quickly.
Okay, I'll interrupt in 30 seconds.
When the first contracts were being let, there was no mention of ArriveCan. So any briefing that was being provided to the minister at that time was all hands on deck. Every department needs certain additional support to keep everything open, including the border. So that would have been that level of briefing. As ArriveCan became more of a bespoke name things, briefing started to come more into that area. In 2022, there was QPNOs. This is a traditional way to brief. You ask about the Minister Duclos. Minister Duclos has been briefed on many different aspects of it. You ask about what is the responsibility of the Minister of PSPC. We have everything from the security to contract integrity. These are areas the minister.
Okay. Now I'm going to jump in. Thank you, and you'll have a chance to respond again. But since the pandemic started, there have been 4 Liberal ministers of procurement: Anita Anand, Philomena Tassi, Helena Jasek, and now Jean-Yves Duclos. 4 ministers in about 4 years. Is it reasonable to assume that all 4 of them have been briefed about either ArriveCan or the ArriveCan project before it had that name? And then is the process of engaging ministers, are they actually providing policy direction? Are they raising concerns about aspects of the process? Because you've talked a lot about ministers being briefed about things, but I would expect it's not just a one-way dialogue where you're sort of telling the spokesman for the department what to say if it comes up in the House of Commons, but they're actually providing some kind of direction or raising concern about things that they're hearing. So can I assume all 4 were briefed to some extent at certain points in time? And at what points did they offer responses, raise policy concerns, suggest adjustments in direction, et cetera?
I cannot speak in detail to the first 1 or 2. When I became Associate Deputy and Deputy Minister, I had more familiarity with the briefings. They were briefed, engaged on the issues that we're facing now, and what is the plan? Is the procurement ombudsman engaged? Is the AG engaged? These are the kind of discussions that are going on in terms of, is there a substantive issue? How is it being fixed? What are the risk mitigation strategies? What are the considerations?
Okay, so they were briefed. They asked questions. You're not really describing a process in which the minister is coming in and saying, well, there's a problem here, you need to fix this. You're not describing a system in which ministers are providing direction. You're just describing a system in which ministers are briefed and then asking questions. Would you say that ministers were actively providing corrective direction on policy issues throughout the process, or were ministers being briefed and asking questions about what you were doing as a department?
Thank you very much for the question. It's an interesting question that you asked, because the financial delegations and the accountabilities rest with the CBSA. So when we're briefing the Minister of PSPC, we're providing some procurement observations, but on the spend, on the record keeping, on the controls, on whether
but ma'am, you understand my point though. You're providing information to a person whose title is the Minister of Procurement. And we have a system in which Canadians expect that minister to take responsibility for what happens in their department. But the way this is being framed, including by Liberal members, is that the minister is just sort of a passive passenger receiving briefings like students at a seminar, listening to what they're being told by the experts and asking interesting questions along the way.
Thank you.
Isn't that a problem?
Mr. Jennings, thank you. A brief response, please.
I would say Minister Duclos has taken an active role. Minister Duclos has been briefed by the Auditor General. We're looking at the whole issue and making sure that we have the direction set to move forward.
Thank you very much. Next up, we have Ms. Khalid. You have the floor for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. I find it very interesting how hard the Conservatives are trying to tie this to a minister when we have heard time and time again from so many different department officials that there was no minister that was linked to this. So I'll leave that there, and I also wonder how much money the Conservatives have spent calling in committee meetings to find out and how they can scramble to link this to a minister, to link this to some kind of big conspiracy, which clearly they're not finding. I wonder how many millions of dollars they're going to spend just to try to get their political points in. But
Thank you very much, Mr. President or Mr. Chair. Very much appreciate it. Before I get into my questions, I just want to say to Canadians and to all of the Liberal members, on this committee, the ministers are inexplicably implicated in overseeing these projects. That's what a minister is for, to oversee the spending of taxpayer dollars. That is their job, to oversee all these things. It would be impossible not to implicate the ministers in these projects and in the outcomes that are received or not received for Canadians. It is impossible to not imply the ministers, to not implicate the ministers here. I want to make that absolutely clear.